Big day. Good. How are you?
Good evening and welcome to the March 7, 2023 regular meeting of the Township Board for the Charter Township of Meridian. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 3 on our agenda is a roll call, and Clerk Guthrie will take care of those responsibilities for us tonight.
Supervisor Jackson?
Here.
Clerk Guthrie is here. Treasurer DeShane?
Here.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Here.
Trustee Sunland?
Here.
Trustee Wilson?
Here.
And Trustee Wazinski?
Here.
All board members are present.
Thank you. Item 4 on our agenda is presentations. For a change, we don't have any, but I'm sure we'll take care of that the next time. Item 5 is citizens' opportunity to address agenda items and non-agenda items. I haven't seen any green cards yet. Is there anyone in the audience, in the room, who would like to speak to the Township Board at this time? Seeing none, then we move on to item 6, Township Manager Report. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor and Board. Good evening. I will be brief. I want to talk again a little bit about our renovation plans, talk about those plans as we go forward. One thing that's changed again, this building was constructed in '72, so we're 51 years later and some of it still remains as it was constructed in '72. The western portion of the building, the communications area, the southern portion of the building, the communications area was built around '92. The plan, we've been saving for about 3 years to renovate the building, and we have set aside the cash to do that. Beginning on April 24th, the entire building will be shut down except for this town hall room. This town hall room, though, will continue to serve approximately 80% of the residents who come and need service from the township. The door that will be used is backed by Chief Plaga. In here will be 5 or 6 offices, starting with where Chief Plaga is at, going along the wall and coming over here. This will be the treasurer's office in here, accepting all bills and other responsibilities that they have. There will be a greeter at the door, seated right where Chief Plaga is at, facing the door, and the greeter will be able to help people with what we're in here, with what services they can get here, and then if they can't be served here, most importantly, where they need to go to be served. We need to displace 53 staff members for this renovation project. The renovation project will include 3 things. It will include carpet, painting, and furniture, and that's it. Some of the areas will not be touched. Keep in mind that the decision was made to keep this building as our township hall about 4 years ago when we contemplated other uses or ideas that came up that the board wasn't really keen on. So we put $2.2 million in cash into the HVAC system back in 2020, and now we're ready to refurbish the rest of the building. I need not remind everyone in the community, because we all remember back in February of 2014 where we closed the central fire station because of its condition, and we certainly don't want to let this building get into that, the condition we faced back then. So the staff will be relocated to 3 different areas, and we hope to move forward with the final plan date. April 24th is the first day that this building will only be operated or open for this room here. In addition to the treasurer's office, we plan to have 2 offices at the board table, and those will probably be assessing and building and records. And then engineering will be over here. We plan to use the existing space we have to the best of our ability, so we don't have to bring a bunch of stuff in, because we'll still be having our board meetings, planning commission meetings, zoning board of appeals, and so on and so on in this room during the reconstruction. We don't need to bring chairs in because we'll have approximately 10 people working in this space, serving the public, and we already have 10 chairs that we can use. So we're looking at things. We can use tables that we have. The rest of the staff will be relocated to, hopefully after this evening, a building down on Bennett Road next to 242 Church. And there will be 19 or 20 going there. There will be 12 going to the police department building, and there will be approximately 10 going to the service center. The communications staff of 3 will still operate out of the studio because there's an ingress and egress that allows them to enter the building without going into the to the main building part. So that's the renovation plan. We hope to be back operating here by October 2nd. We estimate that the painting process is going to take, because we have wallpaper, we have a lot of work that needs to happen on the walls. We expect 3 months of painting and a month of carpet to follow and a month of office furniture. We're very close to signing those contracts. Director Massey, Deputy Manager Opsmer are overseeing the project. And that's where we are, but the date was April 17th, and we've moved it to the 24th to allow everyone 1 extra week to relocate their offices. So I have more on this as we go along, but we're going to, once we get the contracts in place, which should occur in the next 10 days, once those are all in place and everything's ordered, then we will go out with a mass communication to the public, which will even include a letter to every resident from the township explaining where all the services will be at. So that's the communication part of it, and that's where we're at on everything, and I'll continue to update you as we go along. The only other thing I would mention is we've talked about the signs. Now you can start to see in front of the building and over at the farmer's market, the actual metal framing is going in place to erect the signs. So we're going to have those up and running here pretty quickly. I'll have more on the renovation plan when we get to that portion of the budget, when we get to the lease, but so far so good, a long way to go, much needed project. That's my report. There's a lot of other stuff going on, but I really want to continue to make sure that you're aware and that the community is aware of what direction we're heading. We have a 50-year-old building that looks like a 50-year-old building, so we need to make an investment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item 7 on our agenda, board member reports of activities and announcements. Trustee Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. We had our second meeting of the Senior Citizen Community Center Task Force last Tuesday, and we're making some progress, but we are going to be very deliberate in how we look at this project as to its feasibility and so on. And the things that we discussed at our meeting on last Tuesday, which I just lost, are potential sites in the township that meet our criteria of being accessible for everyone within the township. Also, what kind of activities we would want to offer, a timeline which is stretched out quite far, and short-term improvements to the existing senior center. We also want to visit other model senior/community centers throughout the state to make sure that we're looking at what delivers the best to our citizens.
Okay.
The second item that I'd just like to brief you on is Trustee Hendrickson and I have been talking about, in light of the recent tragic gun events that have happened, both the hoax and the other actual events, we've been talking lately about what we as leaders of the local community can do to raise awareness of gun safety in the township. One of the Sorry. One of the Okemos Public School board members reached out to me recently and asked whether we wanted to co-host a gun safety community event with OPS and potentially with Hazlet Public Schools. With the assistance of the police department, we would offer an event on a variety of topics related to gun safety in the home and potentially the workplace, and also focus on the mental health of our children and their parents as we deal with events that shake our community. Although we don't yet know the final format of what we can offer, Trustee Hendrickson and I want to informally poll the board about their interest in co-hosting a gun safety community event. We will bring details to you at a later date.
Thank you. Other board members? Mr. DeShane.
Thank you, Supervisor. On February 24th, I attended Michigan Township Association meeting on wind and solar ordinances, particularly utility scale ordinances before townships. It's really an issue more for rural townships who are looking at wind farms, but it may also impact us because solar is getting a lot more scalable than it has in the past. So something this board may need to consider in the year ahead. On March 1st, I attended the Capitol Conference on Legislative Affairs, and many of our fellow board members were there as well. One of the keynote speakers was former Treasurer Brixey, who spoke on that path from township trustee to treasurer to state representative, and proud to have her up there as a former board member. Also attended the Community Center Task Force on the 28th, and we'll note that Trustee Wilson has agreed to chair that group and doing a very able job of that, and we will have a recommendation to this board by the end of the year. Speaking of March 1st, all tax payments had to be made by March 1st. After that date, they have to be made to the Ingham County Treasurer. So if you have not yet paid your winter or summer taxes, you call our office, we're going to direct you to the County Treasurer's office. Their number is 676-7220. Again, 676-7220. That's my report. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you, Supervisor Jackson. I attended the Environmental Commission meeting last week, and I know you were present as well, and Manager Walsh, and I think Manager Walsh conveyed the board's desire to work with the Environmental Commission very well. And I think he represented the board well in that meeting. So I had my own personal comments that I made that I had submitted to them, and I wanted them to make sure that my comments were not as from the board as a whole, and that they were from me as a resident. So, but they do a tremendous amount of work. I think all of our boards and commissions do a tremendous amount of work. And just the climate sustainability plan that they're working on alone is a large, not just document, but a large task that they're setting forth to improve the environment in Meridian Township. And so I was very impressed with their meeting and glad I was able to attend. I also attended the MTA conference. A bulk of it in the morning was about clerks and budgets for local clerks and how they're going to handle the 9-day early voting for 3 separate elections next year. So I already began discussions with Manager Walsh on how we're going to budget for those, and began discussions with our team about how we're going to handle elections next year. There's a lot of questions yet to be answered with the BOE, so I'm glad that the township does not have an election in May like many other communities do. And so we will see how those shape up for them, and I'm sure we'll get a lot of insight from that. I also attended 2 broadband meetings last week. One was a listening session that the state is putting on. They're going around to a lot of communities around the state to hear from residents and leaders about how broadband will be rolled, what their concerns are regarding broadband being rolled out. And they are looking for citizens to look at the FCC map that came out and to see if their individual home has been, how it's been labeled in regards to whether it has broadband or not. And that if it doesn't have broadband, that you can contest it, because that is how they're allocating money across the state, is whether or not individual homes have broadband or not. So you can go to the FCC mapping, or you can go to the state of Michigan's broadband section of their website. In addition, I also attended the barn preservation, the Michigan Barn, Michigan, I should know this because I'm a member, Michigan Network Barn Association, something like that, conference last Saturday. And I didn't know I was going to speak, so I was in hiking gear, so that was interesting. I was just attending. But the Unruh Barn over at the Historical Village won Barn of the Year, and there were 8 barns that were recognized for Barn of the Year in 2023, and the Unruh Barn is one of them. So I would love to be able to have Brad Brogren, who is the president of the Friends of Historic Meridian, he submitted that barn to win an award. So it'd be nice to invite him for a future presentation to present that to the board. So I think that's a huge award. I was married over at the Historical Village. It's a beautiful village if you haven't been over there. And it's just a really nice amenity for the community. And then lastly, the DEI committee, we've been working on the Celebrate Pride event, and it is one of the items on the consent agenda. So I just wanted to say a few words in regards to the Pride event. In writing that on behalf of the DEI committee, I was doing some research and I was shocked and stunned at how many bills there are that are against gay rights. There's over 230 anti-gay bills right now across the country, and I was shocked to learn this while writing this resolution. And it made me even more proud of the community that we live in, that we're a welcoming community, that we're inclusive, that we're open-minded. Every person is born differently on the face of this earth. I'm different than Courtney, than Marna, than Pat, than Phil, than Scott, than Kathy. We all have something important to bring and represent in our community. And to not be inclusive, to not accept each other the way we are, was shocking to me to see that the number of bills that are out there. And so I'm proud that this township is having a Pride event and that this is on our consent agenda. And I'm just really proud of who we are as a people and as a community and how welcoming that we are. So I just wanted to say that because I'm still really shocked at what I discovered, because I guess I thought that everybody was like Meridian Township or more like Meridian Township. And so it really just kind of surprised me. So I'm looking forward to this, and hopefully Meridian will be a good example to other communities, and maybe we can help change other communities' minds by what we do here in Meridian. And that's my report. Yep.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Well, I'll just add that, first of all, to Trustee Wilson, I certainly support your efforts, and Trustee Hendrickson on gun safety, and look forward to hearing your plans and supporting your program. The other things that I guess haven't been mentioned, I also attended the MTA conference. I attended at one of the sessions that I attended, other than the legislative updates, had to do with updates from the state marijuana commission, whatever. But you know, we've heard a lot about what kinds of changes the legislature may be considering for that, the legislature may be considering for that legislation. I also attended Tri-County Regional Planning Commission Board of Directors this past week, and we had a lot of projects we needed to approve for the next year. transportation projects to approve for the next year, and so we did that. I think that might be all for me tonight. Anyone else? Then we'll move on to our approval of our agenda. Trustee Wilson,
Move to approve the agenda.
supported by trustee Wazinski. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve the agenda as written, please say yes.
Yes.
Who opposed, no. And chair votes yes, and the motion passes. Item 9 on our agenda is the consent agenda. In our consent agenda are a lot of responses from legislators that we contacted, that we offered our resolution in support of gun safety efforts in the legislature, and some other things. It's interesting reading. I encourage those who are interested to go there. We have the minutes of our February 21, 2023 regular board meeting and our February 28 special township board meeting, which I think was our study session. Of course, the bills, and we'll have an application for a liquor license for the Meridian, what do we call it now? Celebrate Meridian event, application for a permit for outdoor gathering for that event, a liquor license application for the Meridian Pride event, which is scheduled for August, by the way, August of 2023. There is also a regular meeting planned for local schools and local governments in our area, and that meeting date is set in the consent agenda. And finally, the resolution in support of the Meridian Pride event from the DEI committee. Mr. DeShane.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Moved and supported by Treasurer DeShane and Mr. Hendricks. We need a roll call vote unless there's further discussion about the contents of the consent agenda. All in favor, no, roll call.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Item 10, questions for the attorney. We have not had any this week. Item 11 is hearings. We don't have a public hearing tonight. I thank Trustee Wilson for getting that information to people who had started to come, assuming that we were having the Village of Okemos discussion tonight, and we're not. So now we move to item 12, which is the action items. There are several. The first is ordinance 2023-01, rezoning at 1642 Lake Court from RB to RCC with a conditional zoning agreement. This is on our agenda for final adoption tonight. Mr. Schmidt will bring us up to date.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Supervisor. At the Township Board's direction from their last meeting, staff did publish notice of intent to adopt this ordinance in a paper of general circulation as required by ordinance. Just to reiterate, this is a proposed rezoning of 0.7 acres of land between Lake Lansing Road and Lake Court, just west of Marsh Road, behind the old Cheesy V's building. From RB, one family high density residential, and C1 neighborhood service to RCC multiple family residential with a limitation that no more than 12 units be built on the property. Planning Commission previously reviewed this and recommended approval, and the Township Board has previously reviewed this and raised no major concerns. At this time, staff would recommend approval of the ordinance. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I move to adopt the resolution approving ordinance 2023-01, an ordinance to rezone the property at 1642 Lake Court, parcel ID number 33020210207032, from RB1 Family High Density Residential and C1 Neighborhood Service to RCC Multiple Family Residential, subject to a condition of rezoning limiting development on the lot to 12 dwelling units.
Support.
Supported by Trustee Wilson. Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. As Director Schmidt mentioned, we have talked about this a number of times over the last month and a half or so. This would allow us to do some infill development on some properties that are vacant and could use some TLC. This would not significantly change the number of units that are possible on this property based on the old zoning and how it was laid out. And so I'll be voting in support of this rezoning ordinance.
And Trustee Wilson, you have comments to add?
Trustee Henderson handled that very well, and for the same reasons, and also the fact that this is a logical rezoning as their surrounding property that has the same kind of rezoning. So we're moving from a pretty blighted condition to use, and the limitation on the units makes sense also. And the egress will be handled in the site plan review because it's on the corner of Lake Lansing and Marsh,
Okay.
basically.
Mr. DeShane, did I see your hand?
Just to reiterate what Trustee Wilson said, this is not only infill, but it's replacing blight. And actually a very public area, the township coming out of Lake Lansing Park South, heading south and then west on Lake Lansing Drive, you would not know you were in a relatively affluent community based on those homes that were there before. They should have actually been rehabilitated many, many years ago. So this is infill and it's replacing blight. And I'm in full support of this rezoning.
Other board member comments? I have one question. Mr. Schmidt, I think Trustee Wilson suggested that this lot that is being rezoned and rebuilt is on the corner. It's not, it doesn't extend to the actual corner of Marsh Road and Hazlet Road.
Correct, it's just off the corner.
Okay. Just for clarification. If there are no further comments, I believe we need a roll call vote in this instance.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Sumlin?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Supervisor Jackson.
Oh, Supervisor Jackson. So sorry.
Yes. Okay.
Now the motion carries 7-0.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item 12B, Hazlet Village Square Commercial Rehabilitation Exemption Application. Director Clark,
Good evening.
good evening.
So here we are, one of our, for the Hazlet Village Square redevelopment project. This is our last formal approval that the board will have to take in support of the project. We have brought forward a brownfield plan that is with the state at this point. We did receive the LOI at the end of January, the letter of interest, let me be clear, the letter of interest at the end of January from the state. And we are in the throes of going through the draft reimbursement agreement for the brownfield plan. So we should button up the brownfield and the commercial rehabilitation exemption process at the same time, maybe even a little sooner than we thought. This evening, the board has to consider, and hopefully for adoption, a resolution approving the 10-year abatement for 1655 and 1621 Hazlet Village Square. That is the other layered incentive besides the brownfield plan to help the full redevelopment of the project, 290 units, approximately 20,000 square feet of commercial space. in a fully rehabbed area, and a very happy Amber, so. Not that that's your priority. But tonight, that is what is attached. There was some typos in the timeline that I presented, apologies. I think I got a little zealous there, but the resolution is correct as well as the attached application.
All right. Is there someone who would like to make a motion in this instance?
I'll make a motion as soon as I find it.
Okay, I understand the problem. We will wait.
Thank you. Right here. Right here. It's not bolded. Grant the exemption. Oh. It just looks different. Okay, but that's right here. All right.
We're all getting used to
Apologize, yeah,
electronic communications.
Resolved. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Board of Meridian Township. Be and hereby is granted a commercial rehabilitation exemption for the real property excluding land located in Commercial Rehabilitation District, Hazlet Village Square, Commercial Rehabilitation District Number 1 at 655 and 621 Hazlet Road, Hazlet, Michigan 48840 for a period of 10 years beginning December 31st, 2023, ending December 30th, 2033, pursuant the provision of PA Public Act 210 of 2005 as amended. Support.
Supported by Trustee Wilson. Trustee Buzinski, would you like to comment?
Sure. I'd just say this is just, as Director Clark mentioned, one of multiple steps to continue to rehabilitate this very important area, this PICA area of our community. And I'm very excited that we are moving forward, and I thank Director Clark and staff for all of their work on this.
Thank you.
And Trustee Wilson.
I think this is the first time in the history of the township that we've taken advantage of the Commercial Rehabilitation Act. So this is innovative thinking about how we can make that project work. And I think we share your happiness that we are moving forward on this arrangement. It's going to be a real bonus to that area of town.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you, Director Clark, for your memo, and you're right, while there is some lost tax revenue, we are under $1 million right now in taxable value, and by the applicant's estimate, this project is going to be a $60 million project when they're done. They did put on the application their estimated completion date, 12/31/28, but the tax exemption doesn't trigger, but with the completion date. They get these 10 years whether or not they're done or not. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's particularly attractive to me and to other board members, as we've seen, particularly with the Village of Okemos, delay after delay after delay. In this case, it's strongly a disincentive for the developers to delay at all because they're going to want to be at full value and gain the full benefit of the CRA.
Correct. And incentivized. Yeah, exactly.
Right, thank you.
Trustee Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. And to clarify, while the planned date of completion is 2028, this is intended to be, as I recall, a phased project where there'll be significant progress, and in fact, some of it will be completed long before that. Is that right?
Absolutely. If I remember correctly, the new phase will start with the most public amenities like the trailhead and the hub community area. So some of the commercial space kind of all coming on a line with the residential space. So they're very well balanced, not trying to fully load the residential part of the project to back pay themselves. They're making sure that they phase the full development together.
Yeah, that area has seen already significant improvement with the construction going on and the American Home project adjacent to it.
That's a part of the other phasing too. I think their original thought was they would have a little bit more space and American House going on. They're like, oh, well, we got to share
Right.
part of the parking lot, yeah.
So we're very pleased, I think, to see this project move forward. This is one of our, I think, 3 PICA areas that were highlighted in our master plan of 5 years ago. And it will be extremely, there'll be a lot of good progress to point at when we update our master plan for the next 5 years. So thank you for your hard work, and we're looking forward to seeing this go through.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Trustee Duchesne, Treasurer
One
Duchesne.
follow-up question, thank you. Do we have a hard date for the demolition of the old L&L store in the adjacent plaza yet?
I do not have a hard date. I would guess that the development would like to get the brownfield plan secured with MEDC first. And so if all of that goes according to plan, that would be an April approval. And so I would expect demolition permits pulled as soon as that happens.
Thank you.
I would just ask you to, for those who haven't been keeping up, to just describe the major aspects of the project, the number of residential units, et cetera,
Sure.
before we take our vote.
Sure. So this area is the unconstructed, on the non-developed side of the intersection at Hazlitt and Marsh Road, the east complex. It's going to take about 19 and a half acres, including the hard corner. And it will include 21,000 square feet of commercial space. So it'll include 2 commercial buildings to the north of the property. One of those buildings is currently standing. It's the Hallmark building where the Baptist church was in. That's going to be a community space, which includes things like a spool, which I've never been in, but it's a spa pool that I think we're gonna all be able to use, and fireplace, outdoor seating and eating area, just like a full community space. And an inclusion of 290 units, housing units, and a mixture of single, like studio to 3 bedrooms. There will be some townhouses with garages in the rear of the property that will connect to the interurban trail. And that is another updated amenity that will include weatherized bathroom, bike racks. There is some extra space for public parking. There will be some electric charging stations. So this whole entire 19 and a half acres will be brought into the 21st century with a large modernization. But it also will include about 100 more units than what the village of Okemos is going to get, and about 10,000 square feet less of commercial space.
Okay? And I had another question that I know you know the answer to.
Confidence.
I know you do. And this is the last step that Meridian Township and this board is responsible for. So the only thing for us that we're waiting to happen is the brownfield approval.
Correct, yep, and that's
By the
brownfield with
state.
the state, yep, because we've approved it, yep, so this is our last step.
So it's a win.
It's a win.
All right. We need if there are no further comments, we need a roll call vote.
Treasurer Duchesne?
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
And Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item C on our agenda is the findings of the Local Compensation Commission, LOCC. That entry is put here based on a letter that the commission wrote to the clerk.
Exactly right.
So I see now that Director Titoff is going to present that to us.
Yes. Good evening, Board, Madam Supervisor. We have for you the findings of the Local Officials Compensation Commission. As you can see, hopefully you will see, can we pull that up? That we have before us the end result of 2 meetings that we had. The Local Officials Compensation Commission met on January 27th, and then they met again on February 15th. What they did is they walked through the information that was presented through compensation study through the Michigan Municipal League. That was a comprehensive study, and likewise with Saginaw Township. They also did a separate study. So what they did is they took the information and tried to balance all of the comparables. So the things that are the townships and municipalities that are similar to Meridian Township, and balanced them out and had very thorough discussion. And this is where we landed. So basically what you're looking at on the determination of salaries is that they put in place an 8% increase for this year. And then on top of that, they would put an additional 3% for next year, 2024. Yeah. For the town, okay. Certainly. So I guess to just lay it out in detail, so for those who are listening, rather than seeing this document in front of them, the township supervisor, effective March 18th of this year through the end of the year, would be paid an annualized salary of $25,429. And then as of January 1st of 2024, the annualized salary would increase to $26,191. For the township clerk and township treasurer, effective March 18th of this year through the end of this year, they would be paid annualized salary of $84,539. And then as of January 1st, 24, their salary would increase to $87,075. Township trustees, effective this March 18th through the end of the year, they would bump up to $13,086. And then January 1st of 24, they would bump up to $13,479. They did have a look at the Parks Commission rate, and they decided to keep that the same as it was last go, and that was $50 per meeting.
Okay. Do you, board members, do you have questions, comments, or anything? So the way this works, as I understand it, is this is not that we have two choices. We can either accept the recommendation of the LOCC or we can reject it.
Right.
And we have to reject it by a board vote.
Correct.
All right.
By majority, correct?
Mr. Walsh?
Raises take effect 30 days from when the clerk was notified of the letter, which I believe was around March 16th or February 16th or 18th, I believe. And then if you move to reject those, you would require a 2/3 vote by the board.
Okay. Mr. DeShane?
Yes, Dr. Titoff, these increases, they seem to me to be very close to the increases that this board has approved for all employees. Is that correct?
That was also taken into consideration, yes.
So they do match the increase given to all the employees?
Yes, they do.
Thank you.
And Trustee Hendrickson?
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Director Titoff, thank you for your work with this commission. I served on this commission previous to my time on the board, and it's one of the smaller time commitments compared to other boards and commissions, but is no less important. I wonder if you, along with the clerk's office, would post the draft minutes of both of the meetings. I know we don't typically do that, but because there are 2 years between
think we have them out
meetings,
there.
they're not.
They're not out there yet?
I just took a look a second ago.
Okay.
It just helps as a matter of transparency to see how that discussion evolved and what other
Absolutely.
communities they were taking into consideration.
Yeah, and we do have them.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Okay, at this point, do we have a motion to,
I don't believe we need a motion. I think by doing nothing, we accept the findings. We only need a motion if we're going to vote to reject it.
but how do I get to that point? That's what I'm asking. Do we have a motion to reject
Oh, I'm sorry.
the recommendation of the LOCC? Seeing none, then we'll move on. Thank you very much for your input. And I should probably note also that the LOCC is led by Mr. Stephen Vagnuzzi, who's the chair of that commission. All right. So somebody changed my screen. Item D, item D is building lease at 242 Church. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you. If I may, in the LOCC, I attended both meetings, and it was quite a lift this time. There was a lot of time and energy, and I just want to thank member Joyce Vancouvering, who's in the audience, who serves on that 3-member panel. I know you put in a lot of hours. I know because you text me a lot about it, so appreciate that. So what's before you, and I know Director Tehoff spent a lot of time on that. Thank you. What's before you tonight is the potential lease of a space over on Bennett Road. It's 2,400. It's next to it's owned by the 242 Church, but it is not a building where church services take place in. We have, when I say we, Director Tehoff and I have made it clear also to anyone who's being reassigned there that if they're not comfortable with being in that space for whatever reason, which I'm not going to get into, all they have to do is tell us and we will reassign. So far, none of the 20 team members that are potentially going to be reassigned there have come forward. So what's before you tonight is the potential lease of this building, about 4,000 square feet. It's about 95 cents per square foot per month, which is about 24% less than the market rate. And we're very fortunate to get that kind of rate on a flexible schedule, because we're not coming in for a year or two. We're coming in for 5 months, and our 5 months is adjustable to when we're ready to get in. So what's before you tonight is the lease of this building. I just wanted to take a moment and highlight what's planned for the building. So when you walk in here to the main door of this building, which sits between Bennett Woods Elementary and the 242 Church. For those of you that were at the Christmas party for Nob Hill fire victims, where we had the party for which I know is most all of you, this is the building where it was located. As you walk in, this will actually be our new administrative assistant in the clerk's office, whose name I understand he's going to be hired, hasn't been hired yet, but if he is hired, his name is Zach. So, I don't know about that, but so, by the way, when you watch the video, Zach Lemaster, happy birthday to you today when you see this. When you walk in here, this will be the new Zach, who will be greeting folks when they come into the building. Take a left, and the clerk's office is all right here. This will be the Clerk Guthrie's office. Next to her, next to the clerk will be her other 2 staff members. So Rebecca and Zach will be here. So you've got the clerk's office all together. Going around the corner, the men's restroom is here. Come down in here, and this will be half of the building department. This will be code enforcement, rental inspections, and there's an office here for John Heckerman, our chief building official, because he'll be going in between offices. So in here would be 2 rental inspectors, 2 building inspectors, code enforcement officer, and chief building official. Then there's a big area here where we'll set up a conference table. So this whole building will have a conference area. And then there's a large kitchen area right here that will be available to the entire team down there. We will not be renting the stage or the auditorium. We hope not to need that while we're there. But you come across the hall, and if you come back to the front door and take a right, this is the IT department. So Kamik, Chris, and Director Giebes will be here in a very large office space for IT. And then you come through here, and this will be the finance office. Director Garber and her 2 teammates will be in here. So finance is all together. IT's all together, clerk's office is all together, half the planning department. And then when you come through here, you'll come into assessing. So Angela and Jennifer in our assessing office will be located here, and right behind them is the assessing director. Director Winstead will be right here. So assessing's all together. And then here will be Director Clark. So economic development, assessing, finance, IT clerk, and half of the building department. Those are the 19 or 20, depending on what number we come up with. Those are the folks that will be reassigned to the space. The lease is $3,800 a month. It begins in late April, runs to the 1st of October. And again, it is a non-church facility owned by 242 Church. So the request before you this evening is to allow us to move forward and authorize the lease and allow Supervisor Jackson and Clerk Guthrie to sign. Be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Sure. Trustee, Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you. I'd like to make the motion. I move to approve the township manager's recommendation to lease the 2630 Bennett Road location in the amount not to exceed $19,000 and to authorize Supervisor Jackson and Clerk Guthrie to sign the lease as presented.
Support.
Supported by Trustee Wazinski. Mr. DeShane?
It doesn't surprise me that 242 has been very flexible with this and given us good terms. Let's not forget, these are the same volunteers that came in and painted our police department. These are the same people that turn out 25 and 30 volunteers every Celebrate Meridian. And they're just very involved in the community, very community-minded, and they're a great human resource and asset to the community. So I'm confident that this will be a good leasing arrangement for the township to be there for the 5 months.
And Trustee Wazinski?
I think
Further comments?
Treasurer DeShane said, I would just say that I know this takes a lot of effort and planning, and I think you've got this set up fantastic, Manager Walsh.
Thank you very much. And just one other thing I just want to note, so you all know, the $19,000, all the costs that are associated with this project come out of the budget. They're not coming out of the general fund or somewhere else. They're all coming out of the budget that was set forth by the board for this.
Okay. Trustee Wilson?
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Have you made arrangements so that if our citizens are calling in, they'll be able to get to these individuals at an off-site location?
Yes.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we'll have the phone set up. And, I have to mention, too, that's a great question, Trustee Wilson. Director Gibas and his team are going to have a very important role in this relocation by making sure that everyone's set up. And it's not going to go without a hitch along the way. But I'm confident that his team, along with everyone else that's involved with this, Director Massey's doing a great job. I mean, I told her, well, she told me she needs a raise after I told her this, but I probably shouldn't have said it. But I said, we're paying you less for a whole year than we would have paid a contractor 6 months to manage this project. So probably shouldn't have said that. But I'm confident that our greeter at the door will also, because Mark and Vern are going to know exactly where everyone's at and where to send people and all that. Plus, Treasurer DeShane is going to be in here as well. So we'll be able to, it's not going to go out, we believe 8 out of 10 people will be able to, residents will be able to serve out of here. And I can tell you, people are going to be well informed about what's going on as soon as we nail down the plans.
Trustee Henderson?
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. A couple of questions. Is this going to, or how is this going to impact not so much the lease, I guess, but the overall renovation project? How is that going to impact the Brightline project that we're currently in the midst of replacing a bunch of equipment?
I would ask Mr. Gibas to address that.
Unfortunately, the extra stuff that we're doing right now has kind of been slipped up in front of. It's a high priority thing that has to be completed on a time-sensitive schedule. So it's slowed down a couple of our projects, but not terribly significantly. 2 to 3 weeks we're behind on our firewall project right now. We've got people out right now at this hour. Kamik and the vendor are out there making up for some of those pieces. The move and the other things will set us back a couple of days, but nothing that should put us more than a total of 3 weeks behind where we wanted to be, which is completion by about June.
Thank you.
Okay. Clerk Guthrie?
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I just want to thank Manager Walsh and the rest of the team. This is a huge endeavor to move people to different locations. And as the clerk of the township, having a presidential primary next year, we think in February, we're pretty sure in February. I'm just really appreciative of the timeline. And I know that it's a quick time, it seems long, but for a project of this magnitude, and moving everyone and getting all of this in place, I'm appreciative for the timeline and getting us back in place so we can serve residents out of the clerk's office for the upcoming presidential primary and the other needs that the other staff members have as well.
Thank you. Yeah, the organization between the leadership on this, Deputy Manager Opsimer and Director Massey, has been really well done to this point. I appreciate it.
I think the rest of your team should be commended for agreeing and cooperating in making these changes for this period of time as well.
Yeah, we were going to, if you recall, we were going to do this piecemeal. We were going to move out section by section. We had a meeting in here and 90% of the team wanted to do it all at once. And they continue, even though we went through, then we had another meeting, we went through everything that needed to happen. And then it was 94% of the people that wanted to do it all at once, so it increased. So, yeah, the staff really wants to do this all at once.
Other comments? So the motion is to approve the township manager's recommendation to lease 2630 Bennett Road in an amount not to exceed $19,000 and authorize Supervisor Jackson and Clerk Guthrie to sign the lease as presented. We need a roll call vote.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
There it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now move to item E, is that 12E? And this has to do with the firefighter contract for the years 2023 and 2026. We've been talking about this for a few weeks, and this hopefully will wrap up another project for
Yeah,
this year.
so thank you, Madam Supervisor and Board. This came from the board. If we go back to our board retreat, this concept of compensating police and fire, even though, and I'll just again, for those that are here this evening that have not been here before, or if you're watching at home and wondering what's the firefighters union, which is 34 professional firefighter and paramedics. We actually have the chief of training here. I think that's your title, right? Chief of training. TJ Booms is here with us this evening. He's also serves as the union president. Back in 2019, we negotiated a 5-year contract, which was 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. So the contract expires December 31 of 24. What seemed like good terms back then, 2% per year, seemed like a pretty good deal going forward, guaranteed 10% over 5 years, while the economy has really made that to be a really bad deal. And, you know, we could sit back and say, hey, contract's a contract, and that's the way it is, and we'll see and renegotiate next year. And that's just not, as the board stated back at your retreat, we want something done about this, I think was what the board said. Mm-hmm. And so taking direction like I do from the board, we began working on this months ago. And it took time to work through it all. But what's before you tonight is what was approved at the last meeting for the 2 police unions. And that is, instead of saying just take your 2%, keep it, and you know, it's too bad that that's what we settled on. We offered them exactly what the rest of the team received, because their contracts were up this year. And so they received a one-time, if you've been here and reached the top of your scale, you got a one-time bump of 5% plus a 3% cost of living adjustment. So 8% in 2023, and then 3% beyond that. So what we did with the firefighter paramedic unit, and as I told the media today, I said, the question was, do you think people might be upset about this? I said, you know, I want people to think back to February 13th. And think about what our firefighter, paramedics, and police officers were doing that night. I don't think there's a person in the township that would take away what the board is doing. So what's before you tonight is to extend the contract for an additional 2 years. So if you approve this tonight, it mirrors the police command and police patrol contracts. 8% in 2023, 3% in 24, 25, and 26. This contract would expire, if approved tonight, December 31, 2026. Sorry for the long explanation, but I wanted everyone who isn't familiar with it to understand what's in front of the board. Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I move to approve the Township Manager's recommendation to approve the attached wage increase as presented, including an extension of the current employment contract with Meridian Township Firefighters Association through December 31st, 2026.
Support.
Supported by Trustee Wilson. Mr. Hendrickson.
Yeah, I appreciate the manager's work and Director Tehoff and the whole team on getting these extensions in place and bringing equity to all of our association contracts. I think that's a really laudable achievement, especially taking the proactive step to reopen this contract and get our firefighters what they deserve. I'll add to the comment that the manager made about what occurred on February 13th and say that they also provided exemplary assistance during the Nob Hill fire. And so, unfortunately, we've had a number of opportunities to see our firefighters at work and see the good work that they do for our community to keep us safe over the last few months. And I think that this is well-deserved.
And Trustee Wilson.
Trustee Henderson summed it up beautifully, and I follow and I support what he said.
Enough said. Mr. Boones, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. On behalf of the members of our union, just like to say thank you to all the board members, Manager Walsh, I'm sure Abby, Amanda, whoever else had a hand in working on this particular project. We appreciate the initiative coming from you guys and supporting us with the raises and the contract extension, as well as, and more importantly, in my opinion, the support that we received after Nob Hill, as well as a couple other events, February 13th being one of them. It's very, very appreciative of those who were able to stop by or send a message to our crews and allowing us to get counselors, et cetera, for those who responded to the scene. So, and then at Nob Hill, I missed you guys when you brought down the Chick-fil-A, so I apologize for that. But I was there doing some other stuff, but we do very much appreciate the support from the board. It's a nice feeling to have that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments? Then the motion is to approve the manager's recommendation to approve the attached wage increase as presented, including an extension of the current employment contract with the Meridian Township Firefighters Association through December 31, 2026. We need a roll call vote, I'm sure.
Trustee Sumlin?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
And Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Next is our item 12F. Mr. Walsh will update us on the planned community conversation on the Village of Oakham's.
Yeah,
with the
thank you.
developer.
Yeah, so this came forward, I think, from trustee Wilson, maybe a month ago or 6 weeks ago, of setting a date, actually for this evening, to have a community conversation with the developers of the village of Okemos. You know, Meridian Township has pledged more for this development than any development in the history of this community, and that goes back a long way. So we've done a lot, and it's time to sit down and have an opportunity for our residents to ask a lot of questions. And I know that from what I've been hearing, and I think what all of you have been hearing, there's a number of folks that have questions. So we really wanted to meet tonight. They couldn't meet tonight. We get them to set a date that's firm. You know, I'd go as far tonight as to say, if this May 9th date doesn't come to fruition, the board may want to consider where we're at on the project. And I'll leave it at that. But before you tonight is to set a date of May 9th, and it's a non-board meeting Tuesday at 6 o'clock. The location will have to yet to be determined, because I don't think, maybe we could potentially have it in here, because there's still a lot of space in here. So tentatively it's in here, but we'll want to think about that, if this is the best space. Once we get set up here in April, we'll kind of know as room-wise. But 6 o'clock, May 9th, Tuesday, for a community conversation with the developers of the village of Okemos.
Okay. Trustee Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I move to set the public hearing date, and put on my glasses so I can read it,
Public
of the
meeting,
Village of
not hearing.
Okemos.
Public meeting, not hearing.
I'm sorry, move to set a public meeting for the Village of Okemos project update to May 9th, 2023 at 6 PM at Township Hall, or alternative location to be announced.
Support.
Supported by Clerk Guthrie. Trustee Wilson.
It was very disappointing to have the developers cancel the meeting for tonight, because we had extensively advertised it. We have a lot of community members who want to know what's going to happen with that project. So we have approached the developers, gotten a firm date of May 9th, and again, I can't emphasize how important I think it is to have that hearing, have that meeting.
Clerk Guthrie first.
Thank you.
Then Mr. Duchesne.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I remember when Manager Walsh first came here. I was a director at the time, and he had a meeting with directors. And he asked, what do you think the top 3 goals should be for this township? And there were a few directors, including myself, who said downtown Okemos. And that was 2012 you came here?
Next week, it'll be 10 years.
10 years. So 10 years. So this, and then you closed down Central Fire Station, rightfully so. It was dismal. And a lot of things have happened. There's a lot of things that have happened behind the scenes that I don't think most people understand. The Manager Walsh is correct. The amount of work that the township has put into this project, with Director Clark, Director Schmidt, directors before that, there have been a number of people working on this to have them, like Trustee Wilson stated, commit to a date and then say that they can't make that date, and then the next date they're available is May 9th. It's very disappointing. I've lived in this township for over 40 years. My uncle lives in downtown Okemos. I know other people who live down there. We're very community oriented. Why they couldn't stick to the date they originally agreed to, it doesn't sit very well. So I hope that they stick to this day, and I hope they're listening. I hope they hear the disappointment that this township board has and them not committing to this date, to meeting with the public. It's not that big of a deal to meet with the public and give an update on what's been happening, because things have been happening. So I'm not sure why they did it. Who knows? It could be a number of reasons. But I look forward to having a meeting, having them explain what's happening. There's too many rumors floating around and unknown answers that everybody's talking about, and it's you know, I hike all over the state. It's probably the worst looking downtown that I've ever come across in the state of Michigan. It's pretty dismal. So I look forward to having this meeting with them on the 9th. Let's hope they commit.
What's your hand up?
Yes.
Mr. Shane.
I share the disappointment of the clerk and trustee Wilson, not only in the cancellation, but then the next meeting being 9 weeks away. 2023 was supposed to be their going vertical year. They've been promising this year is the year it's going to happen. And for them to put off even a meeting for 9 weeks tells me that they have no intention of getting vertical this year. So I think we need to take the manager's advice to heart that if we don't see something tangible happening this year, we really need to reconsider all the support we've given this project, because incentives don't seem to work with these developers. We've given them all we can give them, and short of another $20 million or whatever the ask they had from MEDC, which we will not do. I don't know any other way to get them moving. I suspect they're waiting for a bigger bailout or a bigger handout, and this board is not going to pay for that project. We saw what happened in Lansing Township with Eastwood, which is essentially bankrupted that township trying to create a development where there wasn't one before. This board won't do that. So disappointment is certainly my feeling in moving this date. Maybe they'll pull off a miracle on May 9th. We'll see, but they've got a lot to explain when they show up here. Thank you.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I share the concerns that we've heard from our fellow board members about certainly about the delay. I think that if there are those who have tuned in tonight or who are here tonight to hear about that, you know, for this board member, I'm sure for all of us up here, you know, we do apologize for the misdirect here. This was not something that we intended. We asked the developers to be here, and they canceled on us. I do feel it prudent to highlight a couple of important things. Even still, if you are watching, and we're hoping to have some update with the full expectation that we will have a meeting on May 9th, where we'll get into all of this in more detail. And there are just going to be some high-level things, which is Meridian Township doesn't own the land, right? The land is owned by a private owner. There's a third-party developer who is working on this project, okay? And so, you know, we've heard and seen a lot of frustration about, you know, directed toward the township board as leaders in the community about the fact that this project is not moving forward. And I want to make it abundantly clear that the township staff led by Manager Walsh and the township board has done a lot to see this project happen and to see development come to this area. And there has been some progress. Right? We have seen a fair amount of, when the demolition occurred, we've seen environmental cleanup that has happened that was necessary for any developer, this one or others. It was going to happen no matter what. This board and the various commissions that work with it have approved several versions of this project over the last 5 years. And we have approved amendments. We have worked with them to, provide, I don't recall if there's been any variances, but there probably have been variances to parking codes and what have you. We have worked hard to see that this project has been given every measure of reasonable support that the township and the board have been authorized to give. And I can't fathom how much staff time also has been put into seeing that this project goes through. I know that the planning department, led by Director Schmidt and his predecessor, have put in hundreds of hours on seeing this project go through. So I appreciate the manager's comment about, what we should think about as we move forward here, should this developer take further what I'll characterize as hostile action to this community by refusing to meet with us at the time that they agreed to. This board member, I can't speak for everyone, this board member will be very keen to see them show up to that May 9th meeting and answer the questions of this community, which has treated them very well, given what has happened over the last 5 years. So I look forward to seeing them come and speak with our members of our community about this. As a resident, not just a township board member, I'm very interested to see, to hear from them as to what their plan is moving forward, because we haven't heard from them directly in quite some time as well. And so I am excited to hear from them. I desperately hope that they will follow through on this commitment to meet with our public on May 9th.
You know, what's interesting is if you rewind the tape, and by the way, well said, if you rewind the tape to May 24 of 2018, I don't have the date in front of me, but I believe that's the date. It was a Thursday that we had the big event with a tent on site. So it's kind of interesting. The night they come here will be almost the 5-year anniversary of the event. Yeah.
Other comments? Board members? So this is, the motion is to set a new public meeting for the Village of Okemos project update to May 9, 2023 at 6 p.m., possibly at the Township Hall. I believe we don't need a roll call vote? Okay. Then all in favor of the motion to set the new date, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. And the chair votes yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Walsh.
And thank you for your attention. I appreciate it.
When did he say next week?
Item G, Stryker ALS 360 program. We'll learn all about that from Director Garber and Boomer? Booms, okay. Sorry about that.
anything.
He's not a boomer yet.
Please, Director Garber.
Thank you. Back in September, the Township Board approved allocating a portion of the ARPA funds to purchase power cots for the fire department. And since ordering those power cots from Stryker has presented their ALS 360 program as an alternative option for our ambulance equipment. This program offers 10 years of level payments and an equipment refresh at the 5-year mark. The equipment to be included in the program would be 5 monitors, 5 Lucas CPR machines, 4 power cots and related loading mechanisms, which are the ones currently on order, 4 stair chairs, and 12 community AEDs. The cost for this program for each of the next 10 years would be roughly $215,000. And if the township continues with our own equipment replacement plan, we are estimating the total over the next 10 years to be about $2.3 million. The estimate based on equipment replacement cost increasing about 4% per year. But on February 1st of this year, the equipment cost increase, depending on the equipment, already increased 5 to 15%. With board approval, we would plan to use the ARPA funding already allocated towards the power cots for the first year payment. The original allocation was about $263,000. The first year payment is about $215,000. First year payment would be due once the township actually receives all of the equipment. And right now, that would be estimated to be towards the end of this year, as I think there's one set of equipment that's about 10 months out for ordering. Some of the positives to this program, with the level payments for the next 10 years, it would make it easier for budgeting for our purposes. If we do it ourselves, the amounts per year range anywhere from about $19,000 to $510,000. And that's based on what we know today. If something breaks, it could spike even more than that. One question I have received is, what do we do with the gap in the ARPA funding? Because there's still about
40,000 that is left unallocated if we only reallocate the 215. So there's a couple options for that. We can allocate that remaining portion to the second year payment, or we could pay the full amount up front, which would reduce the remaining 9-year payments. Happy to answer any questions, and Training Chief Booms is here if you have any like equipment specific questions as well. Yeah, you want to add something too?
Part of the program also covers preventative maintenance. So currently we pay for, we call it a cot service to come in. So if we have a piece break on one of our cots that goes in the ambulance, they come in, service that, fix that. They also do preventative maintenance, I think, at least once a year. We've had them a couple times this year for a couple cots breaking down. That, as well as our heart monitors, which get serviced annually, all of that is included in the program. One thing that is also very nice about the Stryker program is they will extend our discount for buying equipment to like schools in the area or community centers in the area. So if we had places that would like to purchase an AED to keep at their event center, whatever it might be, it comes at a discounted price from Stryker because they see this as a community opportunity as well. That includes some of the updated AEDs that they have. Also call 911 right away. So as soon as the lid is opened, it transmits a call, as well as it makes it compatible with all of our heart monitors that we would be using when we respond to somebody down and we have to use our monitor to shock them or care for them in that way. So there's a couple other things that are benefits to the program as well, not just to the fire department, but the community as well, so.
Okay. So the first thing we can take from this is that you and your colleagues are recommending this arrangement.
Yes. I guess one of the reasons why we would recommend it is, as it was laid out in the plan, they will, as technology improves, they will update the technology. I believe they said even if it is after the 5-year update, if they have something new come out, like on a heart monitor, an example of that would be like when capnography came out, which monitors the exchange of your gases in your lungs. That was an update that we had to, then purchase new monitors for that. They will update that equipment all under the umbrella of the plan. So we'll have the latest, greatest equipment that they have available through their company. The power cots are a huge advantage. I can tell you from personal experience, I've gone out on injury with a hernia because of lifting a heavier patient into the back of an ambulance. And we've had, I think, 4 or 5 other of our members have similar problems as well as back injuries. So the power cots, I've looked at some of the ones that other agencies in the area have, and you push of a button loads it into the back of the ambulance, so you're not having to lift, a 300, 400, 500 pound person with a couple people awkwardly on the sides of the cot. So that's also another huge advantage. I know Delta Township, I believe East Lansing Fire Department have already signed and have gone to this program as well. So, was there anybody else that they told us in that meeting?
City of Lansing.
Oh, yes. City of Lansing did as well, so.
I would just add, if I may, that I've reviewed all this with Director Garber and Chief Hamill. Support it. Took me a while to get there, but support it. The one thing I would ask that you just consider the program tonight, funding it. The other discussion about art funding, I think we want to wait till we get to our budget, because this is a $200,000 cost for '24 that we hadn't anticipated for next year. So when we get into the budget in July and August and September and come to you, we'll know more about where we're at and where the art funding might help. So I'd hope that we keep the discussion just to this evening, if we could. Thank you.
Mr. Duchesne.
Yes, just a question regarding this proposal from Stryker, a Kalamazoo-based company, I believe. Did we get other competing proposals? Are there other companies out there like Stryker that have approached us with a similar all-encompassing plan like this one from Stryker?
You want me to answer? To my knowledge, I'm not sure of any other companies that offer it. It's not to say that they don't. We've not heard of any other ones. Seems to be, at least in this area, the popular one that other departments have gone to.
And our experience with Stryker has been very positive.
Yeah, they make good equipment. Can't say I've ever, over my 17 years of off and on using some of their stuff, never had any complaints. We have, I think, one stair chair right now that I'm pretty sure we've had the entire time I've been here. So, their equipment tends to last, and the span of where they're putting equipment in is pretty expansive. Emergency rooms, doctor's offices, so they've been around a long time, seem to have pretty good handle on building quality products.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I have some trepidation about this request. I don't have any issue with the merits of allocating money for the power cuts. I think we spoke as a group to that by allocating the initial art money to that program. But we're talking about going from $262,000 in 1 year to over $2 million across 10 years. That's a much bigger commitment, and I understand the benefits that you've laid out here. So let me ask a couple of questions just so I can try to understand the value of this program. We have a price for 4 power cots, which is $262,000. When they do this refresh at the halfway mark, do we keep the initial 4 and get 4 more, or do they take the 4 back and we are left with 4?
So when they do the refresh at the 5-year mark, they would take all the equipment back and replace it with new equipment.
Yeah. What's the lifespan of one of these power cots if we were to own it outright?
I'll let you answer that one.
I don't know the exact lifespan of a power cot if you were to purchase it outright, but I do know that if you purchase it outright, you become responsible for any motor problems, which is how it's driven to raise it up and down. You become responsible for purchasing some type of preventative maintenance program or repair program like we currently do through, I believe, MSAR is the company we use. So it's sort of an all-encompassing thing when you have the cots, and it's not just our cots, it's many other pieces of equipment that eventually over their lifetime, we'll have to replace.
Yeah, and I don't doubt the value of, getting us out of a service contract, although I would be interested to know how much we pay to service our current equipment so that I can have a sense of how much savings that would actually be. That would be helpful to me. But you have that. It's the ancillary equipment is good. And I don't think any of us up here are not wanting to equip the fire department with what they need to serve the community well. I'm just curious about, what, if I could see what the cost of all of this separately was and when we would have to purchase that over the next 10 years, that might help me to get to a point where I could say, okay, $2 million is a decent, estimate for what we would spend anyway, or this is a better value to us. It's information that I feel like I should have, and before I can say, I would fully support, spending $2 million on this program.
Yeah, so if I may.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was the exact question I had for Chief Hamill when we met. We met twice over this. Do we really need to replace this equipment, or do the cots last for 8 years? and all of the equipment, and we reviewed stuff from other communities and time and usage. And it became apparent to me that the 5-year mark that they're talking about, and I'm not one to spend money and allocate money or recommend allocating money when we don't need to. That's not my history. So I am listening to Chief Hamill, who is somewhat of an expert in this area. I'm very confident that the equipment will need to be replaced, especially the cots are the one concern. They could need to be replaced before the 5 years. As Director Booms mentioned, there's a lot of things that can go wrong with these electric cots. And so we're very happy to have this maintenance plan on these. And one other thing I would note, stepping back into history, if you don't mind. So go back to 2017, and this is how I came to grips with, or terms with recommending this or signing off on it. Back in 2017, we promised the voters a number of things with police, fire, pension, equipment, and fire trucks and all that. And you may recall that we promised $250,000 a year for the ladder truck. And the questions are always going to be, what are you going to do after that 4 years is up? Well, 2022 was the last year. And it's just so ironic to me when I looked at this, what I saw was that we are using the $250 that came from the 2017 police and fire millage, and we're allocating that and I feel good about this, that we're putting that $250. I mean, these are really good, legitimate questions. I just want you to have all the information that the $250 that was promised to the voters that would go towards a fire truck would be, if approved, allocated towards equipment for the fire department. I think that's a big piece of this. Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. How much do we spend per year on maintenance of this equipment?
So it does depend on the year, because the current contracts we have, I believe, are for 5 years on different pieces of equipment, and they're not all falling in the same year.
So we currently have a contract for equipment repair, a 5-year contract.
Multiple contracts.
Okay. And so some of these pieces are in different contracts, and this would put all of these pieces into one contract.
Correct.
Okay. How many ambulances do we have?
What's that? We have 5.
Okay. And so these 4 power cuts, there's going to be one in each of them, one in each ambulance except for one?
Yes. The 5th one that we're keeping is sort of a backup to the backup. And the reason for that is it takes about 2 years once you sign a contract, if I'm not mistaken, to receive a built-out ambulance. Okay. So if we have one, an unfortunate, it hits a deer or goes down for some reason or another, we could be looking at a 2-year window to get a replacement for it. Mm-hmm. So Chief Hamill has decided to keep the 5th ambulance, so we have plenty in backup until that becomes a little bit easier to get, new ambulances.
And
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to add to the preventative maintenance question that you had. Mm-hmm. One thing that we had a challenge with early this year is MSAR, we were having trouble finding somebody to come in and service the cots that we have. And so with Stryker offering that service, I'm fairly confident that will always be there, since they are, managing this whole program and servicing all of the equipment if we were to move forward with it.
Right. I'm assuming that if something goes wrong with this equipment, you're going to do an emergency repair and it's going to be paid for anyways. But with this contract, it's ensuring that it's being maintained, like our oil in our cars. I mean, that's how I can equate it to my own personal vehicle. My tires and my oil, I have to invest in it to keep it going. Otherwise, I'm going to be in deep trouble.
Yep. So a perfect example of that is our heart monitors. They're currently on a schedule with Zoll, who makes our monitors we have now, and they come in annually and service each monitor, recalibrate everything, fix anything that is in need of repair, which usually there's not too much for them to repair, but the calibration and things to make sure they're monitoring correctly, operating like they should, has to be done annually. And so Stryker, in the same format, would have us on a schedule. And so we would know, every March or April, they're going to come in and they're going to service all of our heart monitors and our Lucas CPR machines and anything else that has an annual sort of service that needs to be done, like a vehicle.
So these 5 monitors and 5 CPR machines, there's one in each ambulance, including the backup?
Yes.
Okay. And the 4 stair chairs, you currently only have 1 stair chair, is that what I heard?
We have 2 stair chairs right now. One is an electronic, works off of a battery. The other one is manual.
Where they're pulling down
where
the stairs?
it's helpful to get people down the stairs, but you're still manually,
Yes.
working them down.
Yes, okay. And the 12 community AEDs, where are these AEDs? Are these in mostly township buildings?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to say that included the police cruisers as well,
Okay.
the AEDs that our officers carry.
And the AEDs, are they serviced on they're tested on an annual basis? What is the current process to make sure that the AEDs are in service and ready to use?
There currently is not a process to service them. What I do is, since taking over about a year ago, I went and inventoried everything that we have and made sure all of the pads, the batteries, and everything were working correctly. And then we'll be checking those annually ourselves. A lot of the new AEDs, I believe, have a Wi-Fi built in that helps with the dialing of 911 when they're activated. But it also sends a signal that you can go and check them to see when the pads are expiring, how the battery level is, and it gives you like a check-in almost through a website that Stryker would have given us.
So I'm assuming if the township were to grow further and we needed an additional ambulance, or we needed to use that 5th ambulance to have additional equipment, that a contract would be, I don't know if this is for Manager Walsh or for one of you, that it would be amended. So
That would be my guess, but I'm not the numbers guy.
I mean, it's an amendable contract is what I'm asking.
That's my understanding.
Okay. And then I just have one comment for the manager, since I'm asking questions about AEDs, to make sure that there's an AED in that 242 building when staff goes over there. I'm not sure if there is. Thank you. Those were all of my questions. Thank you.
Does anyone else? Trustee Wazinski.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. A few questions, if you may. So I'm reading here, this program would include all equipment at the beginning, equipment refresh at 5 years, connectivity, data solutions, and service support. And that would be a cost of $214 per year, a cost of $2.14 million over 10 years. Our existing contracts, as this states, is about 150,000 more than that currently. Is that correct, Director Garber?
It's an estimate based on how many times we think service will have to come out, because currently our contracts, we pay like an annual fee, but we also pay for parts to be replaced, labor for them to be here. And it's also based on a 4% equipment increase per year, whereas, like I said, it already increased 5 to 15% this year.
Great, thank you. And so when you say it increased 5 to 15%, equipment cost increase, so how does that work into kind of a maintenance plan? So if a piece of equipment had to be replaced, is that covered within this maintenance plan?
Yes, if the equipment breaks and has to be replaced, it would be covered under this program.
Okay. Is there, is there a cost, and you might not know this yet, is there a cost for canceling existing contracts?
That's a good question. I am not sure at the moment.
Because you said there's multiple, right? 5? Or did I make
I don't
that
know
up?
exactly how many, but
that up?
there's
Okay.
multiple ones, yeah.
I'd be interested in just asking you to look into that. So, and this might be for Director Booms. So are these equipment that are listed in the note or the memo here, the 5 monitors, the CPR machines, the power cots, the stair chairs, and the AEDs, are those all Stryker equipment, or are those from different companies and Stryker is willing to maintain somebody else's equipment?
They are not Stryker's equipment, like the Lucas machines, that is a Stryker product. And those are the CPR machines that we've, worked and purchased over the years. They're not proposing maintaining the equipment that we already have. They're giving us brand new stuff and they'll maintain that. So
All of that listed?
What's that?
I'm sorry, all of the equipment listed on this memo?
Yeah, so what they'll do is it's an exchange at the beginning. So our cots we currently have, they'll take those and provide us with the brand-new power cots and lift systems that go in the back of the ambulance to bring them back in. And then once those are all installed and up and running, and some of this might happen at the same time, they'll replace our Lucas CPR machines, which we have in all of our ambulances and our advanced life support ladder truck at Station 1, as well as our command car. So they'll take all of those, replace those with the newer version of that, and then they'll work. I think the last thing they're gonna do is our heart monitors, because it takes time to build those out and get them shipped to us. So, but once all of that takes place, I believe that's when the 10-year timeline starts, once we have all of the equipment. So we're gonna, if we were to approve this, we're gonna start seeing some of that equipment show up in the next month or so, because we already have ordered the power cots. So we'll see that stuff, but it won't actually, we'll get a little bit better than 10 years out of Stryker, because like I said, that timeline doesn't start until we have all of the equipment in place.
That's helpful, thank you.
So that's kind of an advantage that we have right now, in a sense, because they can't produce everything as quickly as they would probably like, which is not necessarily a bad thing when you're talking about, life-saving medical equipment, so.
And time for implementation on your end.
Yeah.
One last question.
Sure.
So this is what I was thinking, you mentioned it. If we had one company that was overseeing all this maintenance, that's got to assist with scheduling that maintenance and ensuring that maintenance is happening, not to say that the fire department is not doing that already.
Yeah, that would take a little bit of responsibility off of me as the training EMS chief, because right now, part of my responsibility is to schedule those contractors to come out, as well as the chief. Between the two of us, we get those things scheduled to come out. And they did, when we were talking with them in the initial meeting, I asked, how quickly can you have somebody here? Because sometimes something breaks and it's 2, 3, 4 days a week. And they're very committed to, within 24 to 48 hours, having a technician at the station to come and fix the stuff. So we wouldn't have to ship anything anywhere. They would be coming to us. Whereas right now, like, for example, our heart monitors, we send out to Zoll when we have to have something other than the preventative maintenance done. So we have to ship that out to them and then ship it back. So there's a delay just in getting it, through the shipping process.
Thank you for all of that.
Absolutely.
I just said that I share your sentiments over there, Trustee Hendrickson, but given that overall the cost will decrease, given our estimates, going to a same company and having this maintenance in place, easier to manage. I mean, overall, I feel that it's, and it's more timely, that this, I'm in support for this.
Okay. Treasurer DeShane.
I'm going to support this as well. Let me make a motion to begin with. I move to approve the recommendation from the Finance Director and Fire Chief to enter into the Stryker ALS 360 program and to transfer ARPA funds in the amount of $214,677, originally earmarked for the Stryker power cots, to cover the first-year payment for the Stryker ALS 3600 program.
Support.
Supported by trustee Wazinski.
My reasons for supporting it, first of all, the ones that trustee Wazinski pointed out, this is a turnkey solution. And with the stress that our fire department's been under recently, every single one of your firefighters over there to have a single number to call for a whole range of equipment, I think could take some stress off a very stressed department the past few years. Second reason is, again, trustee Wazinski pointed this out, this is a cost savings. Staff has analyzed this and have said over the 10 years, we will spend more doing this piecemeal. So to me, it's a win-win. We get a turnkey solution, one number to call, and overall there'll be a savings for it. I like this program a lot. The past 2 years, I have spent $2,000 fixing the electronics in my late model Chevrolet. 20 years ago, you didn't spend anything on electronics. Now a car is a computer with 4 wheels on it. You know, there's so much electronics built into everything. That's where you can end up. And who can fix those things besides the original equipment manufacturer? It's very difficult. It's highly specialized. Electronics are the core of much of this equipment, and we want to make sure we've got this covered. This is in essence also buying an insurance program for this equipment, and that in the long run, most insurance programs like this do pay off. If nothing else, they protect us from the huge liability of a lot of unintended breakdowns. Thank you for bringing this to us.
Trustee Wazinski, you have further comments?
No further comments.
No further comments, okay. Anyone else? Trustee Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I appreciate the discussion on this. I seeing that there will be a decrease in the overall cost over the next 10 years by consolidating the contracts has helped to make me feel a little bit better about the notion of entering into a 10-year contract. And that's partly just, getting up to speed on how we service our equipment, which is not an area that I am a specialist in. Mm-hmm. So thank you to Mr. Booms and the manager and Director Garber for providing that insight. I think I will come around to supporting this this motion in front of us this evening. And then I'll put a challenge back out to Manager Walsh to find a new way to spend the $250,000 we're not spending on a ladder truck, since it seems as though we'll be actually saving money every year by doing this instead. So I know that's a challenge you don't like to have to face, but here we are.
Thank you.
Further comments? Questions? The motion before us is to approve the recommendation to enter into the Stryker ALS 360 program, and we need a roll call vote.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
And Trustee Sullivan?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Moving on to item 12H. Mr. Walsh, did you have?
Yeah, I just wondered if I may, thank you. I want to, Jordan? I was going to introduce, Jordan's here this evening. She's from WILX. She just arrived here from Atlanta. She's a graduate of Howard University. I had my first interview with her today, and I just wanted to welcome her to the community. So welcome, Jordan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So the final action item is a resolution celebrating Women's History Month. I actually put it on the agenda, as has become our habit to recognize and commemorate Women's History Month. So I would ask if anyone would like to read the resolution. Trustee Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I move to approve the resolution celebrating Women's History Month.
Support.
I think I'll let Trustee Sunderland support this one tonight, if you don't mind.
Don't mind at all.
Thank you. Trustee Wilson.
Well, back in the day, I did a minor in women's studies when it was brand new in the early 70s. So I'm all for woman power, and I'm pleased to see that we were going to do this. Thank you.
And Trustee Sunderland.
No, it just, we need to have support for the women in our community and celebrate our history.
Thank you. Trustee Wazinski.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. May I read this out loud?
Okay.
I just want to hear how wonderful we are.
How wonderful. Let everybody know.
I think, Supervisor, you put this is your resolution, correct?
Actually, in all honesty, it's a resolution as it has been presented by this board before.
Okay, thank you.
I did not change it at all.
Must be working. Whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our nation in countless recorded and unrecorded ways. Whereas American women have played and continue to play critical economic, cultural, and social roles in every sphere of life of the nation. By constituting a significant portion of labor force working inside and outside the home. Whereas American women have played a unique role throughout the history of the nation by providing a majority of the volunteer labor force of the nation. Whereas American women were particularly important in the establishment of early charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions in our nation. Whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background served as early leaders in the forefront of every major progressive and social change movement. Whereas American women have served our country courageously in the military. Whereas American women have been leaders not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement and an emancipation movement, the industrial labor movement and the civil rights movement and other movements, especially the peace movement, which we have created more fair and just society for all. Whereas despite these contributions, the role of American women in history have been consistently overlooked and undervalued in literature, teaching, and studying of our American history. Whereas women have played and continued to play a major role in the governing of Charter Township of Meridian, serving on numerous boards and commissions, and as the supervisor, treasurer, clerk, and trustees throughout the township's history. Whereas the Congress of the United States passed a resolution in 1987 and every successive year since, then designating March as Women's History Month, calling upon the United States to observe and honor the role of women in the nation with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. DeShane, do you have something to add?
I do. Thank you. Having raised two amazing young women in Meridian Township, I think Meridian Township is a very fine record for, they can be proud of passing this resolution. And if you look at the board pictures there's never been a board that has had more females on it than this board here. So clearly the voters like women's history and women's current status in the township an awful lot. So Trustee Hendrickson and I need to stay on our toes as well because the trend is clear. Thank you.
Other comments? Then Clerk Guthrie, could we have a roll call vote for the resolution?
Sure. Trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson.
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson.
Yes.
Trustee Sunland.
Yes.
And Trustee Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you very
Full
much.
support of the board.
We move to item 13 on our agenda, We have one board discussion item tonight, Oklahoma Schools Delegation of Authority for Building Permitting and Inspections. Director Schmidt will introduce this subject to us.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. So as everyone's aware, township voters approved millage for Oklahoma schools to do major construction over the course of the next 6, 7, 8, 9 years. Depends on a lot of different.
A lot of things.
Current schedule I've seen is 8. Represents about $250 million in construction value. Under Michigan law, schools at every level are treated differently than other buildings in that they are reviewed by and inspected by the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs. All permitting, all inspections, everything are through the state. This is similar to what happens in more rural communities that can't afford to stand up a building department. They go through the state. Under that system, the local municipalities get no dollars from building permitting and provide no services. There is a provision that allows the school board to request delegation of local authority, which means that the local municipality has the capacity, is properly, has the proper staff, that have the proper background, and is able to then do the building permitting and inspecting locally. We have history of this with East Lansing Public Schools in that we did that for Donley many years ago. We continue to do that. We have done all the inspections in Donley over all the reconstruction and the solar panel project and everything that's happened out there. It's been a very successful project. One of the things I will point out is that the state has not updated their fee structure in some time and are substantially cheaper permitting wise than local municipalities. And so what we did with Donnelly is we have the ability to charge for the actual cost of our services. And so in that case, we reduced our fees to roughly match up with the state fees, so that there wasn't a negative financial impact on the school district. In this case, we looked at the school district has brought the Crispin Company on board to project manage this project. This series of projects, they reached out to us early on, asked if that was an option here, and how we could structure this, and Manager Walsh had conversations with Superintendent Hood as well. And so ultimately what we came to is they provided us with their schedule of construction, and based on what they were, if it's a $70 million reconstructive Chippewa, I'm just throwing out a number. It's not an accurate number. Don't quote me, people at home. That is a $700,000 permit to us based on our current fee schedule. And so our fee schedule, we have a flat fee schedule. A lot of places do it differently. But what happens on our fee schedule is for almost all the permits, it's roughly what our costs are. Average single-family house, average commercial new construction, it's all roughly average. When you get into these super outlier permits, the tens and hundreds of millions of dollar permits, we're never going to be able to provide that level of service to them. So it makes sense for us to then reduce our cost to be more in line with what the state is. And so in this case, roughly what we offered them is their preference is clearly to have the locals do it. We're right here. We could be there on a moment's notice. We know the community. We know the contractors. We'll give them much better service. Not that the state doesn't provide good service, but we're right here. It's much easier for us to provide that service. And so as to not then financially burden them, what we offered functionally is a 2-tier system that any permit under $2 million, we have to charge you our full freight. That if we don't, we're going to be subsidizing and we'll lose money on the permit. That's not good for anybody. But if it's over $2 million, we'll just charge the state's multiplier, which is it's about a third of ours. What this represents in total, based on the rough estimates that we have right now, is $788,000 of building permit revenue over the course of the next roughly 5 years, if we enter into this agreement. If we don't, the number is 0. We will have no role in this project. We've talked about this internally. We've talked about this with our partners in East Lansing, who handle our plumbing, mechanical, electrical permits. We're confident we can handle this under our current workload. The one piece that I will point out that we did with Donnelly as well is we will bring in a third-party consultant to do the plan review. That is, school plan review is technical. No municipality has the ability to do that. And so we did that with Donnelly. I have relationships with a couple of firms. Building official Heckman does as well. And so we'll reach out to them and get a good price for that plan review on the major projects. So the true reconstructs, those will be farmed out. But the permitting will be done in-house. We'll do the inspections in-house. We'll coordinate it all. And I think all in all, it helps keep the money in the community, and it also, gives them a level of service that they wouldn't otherwise get. And so we're here this evening to present this to you because we will ask for a formal approval in the future. It is because it is a large number, and B, it's a big commitment from the township's perspective. It is functionally a 5 to 8 year commitment depending on the order of construction. And so I'm happy to answer any questions if the board has any at this time.
Okay. Board members. Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Not so much a question as it is a comment, which was my big concern about this was something that you stressed a moment ago, and so I'll have you repeat it after me, which is staff is confident that we can absorb the workload into our existing work.
Absolutely. Even with the anticipated retirements, what this does is it gives us a baseline of expectation for coming years. We know in 2024, based on the current schedule, this is going to be here, and so that what we will likely do is we will assign one inspector to be on call for them, basically as needed. We'll work out the details once we get to that point, but we'll probably bounce it back and forth between our current 2 inspectors as long as they're still with us. Mm-hmm. Even anticipating potential retirements that are coming, we're confident that we can handle this.
And that's within, hopefully, expected projects in Hazlet and possibly in downtown Okemos as well.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. That's exciting.
Mr. DeShane.
The $788,000 in building permit fee revenue, how much of that will be paid out in the plan review, approximately, that we have to contract out?
I'd have to get back to you with that. It's ultimately, we haven't even reached out to the.
Is it 25%? Is it?
Oh, no. Typically, these are much under 10%, I would say.
The thing I would ask you to do, to Trustee Hendrickson's point, is that this does become burdensome, that you would bring this back to the manager and let him know that other permits are being delayed because of this very big revenue contract we've got with the Okemos schools. We don't want homes being held up or the businesses being held up because we've entered into this agreement.
Agreed. And this is, not to get too far into the weeds, this also kind of falls under commercial review, and so it wouldn't hold up houses and say, like the average homeowner is not going to see any difference in their service. If their permit's getting held up, it's for a completely different reason.
Thank you.
Trustee Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. In reading through all the detail that you provided, which is a lot, and with your statement of high confidence being able to meet the capacity issues, to me, this is a no-brainer because it's going to bring in revenue that's going to hover around $90,000 to $100,000 per year for the term of the contract. And why would we not do that if we have the capacity?
Trustee Wazitsky.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I would agree with what Trustee Wilson just said as well. I must have missed this. I know, Director Schmidt, you have everything up here. Can you one more time explain to me why it's, what's the benefit of a permit over $2 million in value that we will charge the multiplier equal to the state of Michigan, which is currently 3.1%. What would be the alternative to that?
Well, we could charge them full freight, which is what so the state of Michigan's multiplier is 0.00031.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Ours, or no, 2 O's, 0031. Ours is 0.01. So we're substantially higher by 2/3. So it's a twofold reason. One, it gets it to so it takes away the cost argument in the discussion that, well, we could go to the state and get cheaper permitting. But two, it also more aligns us with what our action, because we're statutorily obligated to charge for service. So like, if we spend $100, we should be charging for $100. And when you get into these mega permits, it's really hard to do. And so it makes, absent completely restructuring our permitting fee structure, which I don't think anyone wants to do, it makes sense on these giant permits like this to take a look at whether or not we can reduce our fees.
Just one last comment. In addition to revenue, you mentioned that we're local, so it's probably faster, it's more feasible, and will likely, I'm making an assumption, asking you to confirm or not, that it will likely keep the project moving along if they have a more consistent.
The easy example here is when, the foundations on these buildings are going to be huge. There's going to be multiple days of pours. And if they get rained out one day and they had an inspector scheduled, and that inspector then is scheduled the next day to be in Wacusta for 4 hours on a pour, it's going to delay them. Whereas I can say, even if I had Mr. Rao scheduled there on Thursday, I can send Mr. Hines or Mr. Heckman on Friday if I needed to. And so it's just easier. It's going to be way easier for us to move the parts around if something happens.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? So, Mr. Schmidt, this is a contract between the school board, actually, I believe, and the township.
So technically, it is delegation of local authority, which is we jointly are applying to the state to allow the permits to be submitted locally.
Okay.
Whether or not we actually need to enter into a contract based on the fee structure, we can have that conversation. I think we have a solid understanding of what we're going to charge them and what their expectations are. So I don't think we necessarily need a specific contract, but we could if the board so desires.
So what you need from us is essentially the permission to enter into this agreement.
Correct.
With the school board. And what do you estimate the time span to be?
Yeah, so it's I believe an 8-year construction cycle. It's a 5-year permitting cycle. So it kind of goes up and down based on what the big construction project is, right? So in year one, based on the current schedule, it's 3 kind of small permits that are intended to be sort of setups so they can use those spaces while other things are under construction. And then the second year, there's a big permit. And so that permit will then, that's a roughly 24-month construction cycle that will be on that project. And then year 3, there's a small permit. And then year 4, when this one ends up, another big one comes in. And so it keeps doing this up and down as we go down the road. I think year 5 is the one we looked at. We're going to be busy that year. That'll be the year we're busy. But also one of the big permits that year is related to athletics, if I remember correctly. And so it's not a school building. It's more athletics. So we're confident we can make this work.
Okay. There is no time crunch.
There is no time crunch. I wanted to make sure we got every question. We'll follow up on Treasurer's Exchange question, rough plan review estimate cost, and bring it back to the next meeting.
Okay. But in general, I presume this board is in support of your working with the school system to do what needs to be done. Mr. Hendrickson.
Does the state ever say no?
I do not believe they are permitted to say no if we meet the minimum It's the minimum requirements under random chapter MCL 338.851B5. If we meet the minimum requirements and the locals have agreed to it, they are obligated to allow it. They would have to find us not meeting the standards, and if that was the case, we'd have a bigger problem.
Craig Guthrie.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Is this because you mentioned in the memo, 788,000 over the next 5 years, but then you said the project could be 8 years. So is this a length of the project type of contract, or is this a 5-year contract?
We will renew this agreement. We have to renew this agreement annually, actually.
Okay.
So it won't come back to the board, but every year, I get a copy of the Donnelly form that I need to walk down to Mr. Walsh and have him sign to continue, because we're the agency that has the permits and has done the inspections, so they continue to have that with us. So it's the $788,000 is when we expect to receive the fees, because the permitting will be in the front 5-year block, but the construction will continue for roughly a full 8 years.
So in the first 5 years, you expect to roughly receive around this amount of money?
Correct.
And then in the next 5 years, do you expect to receive more, or is that it?
No, the permit fees we expect will be in the first 5 years. It might trail into the 6th depending on factors, but the money will be at the front end, and the last 2 years will just be inspections.
Okay, so it's about $100,000 a year.
100 and a quarter, yeah, somewhere in there.
So if you had to hire an additional person to oversee this, if it became insurmountable, the money would be there to do it.
Yeah, we could, but we don't anticipate that problem.
Right.
And to get this board members' signatures, you don't need to come back to the board for any kind of.
We will come back. We'll probably have this on the consent agenda for formal approval at the next agenda.
Okay.
The next meeting, and then authorizing the manager to sign, as we've done in the past.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 14 is comments from the public. Are there members of the public who would like to speak to this panel at this time? Okay. Then we move to item 15, other matters and board member comments. Oh, Trustee Wazinski.
Madam Supervisor, I just wanted to go back to the Women's History Month, but I mentioned about the board being predominantly women, but I'm going to say a number and it's going to be wrong because I can't even do percentages in my math, but I believe, Manager Walsh, we have nearly 25% of our staff is women now? Or am I thinking? Yeah, higher than that, and
Yeah.
25% in our police department.
Yeah.
Higher than that.
We're approaching 30% in the police department. The state average is about 12 to 14. And actually, if you look at our directors, we actually have a majority of women, which has not been the case for a long time. A majority of the women, our directors are women. And we're proud of that. Thank you.
Excellent. Yes, and yes, you should be in Director Titoff as well. I think that's significant and super important improvement. Not to say we need 100% women, because that takes away from the whole equity conversation, but I just want to thank the manager and the directors for that, and also just all of the women on our team and all of the others that support us. So, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for making that point. Other comments and questions? Okay, I have one to, we earlier talked about the sign ordinance, and Mr. Schmidt has presented the adjustments he's trying to, he would like to see made in that. At another point, we talked about the need for a study session for the sign ordinance. Okay, so do you think we still need a study section, or just to get back on that subject in our discussions until we're ready to move it forward? Mr. DeShane.
I suggested originally, and I still think we need it. It's a huge.
Study session?
Yeah, it's a huge ordinance, and I think we had a very productive study session a week ago on the marijuana issue, and I think we could have a equally valid and productive session on the board, or on the sign ordinance. It may not take us full 2 hours. I like the format, and I like to be able to just have the back and forth and flesh out that new ordinance, so we all understand it better before we vote on it.
Okay. Other comments? Mr. Walsh, Do you have a suggestion for a study session in the next month?
Do you want to try to do that this evening, or do you want to put this on the agenda for the 21st to set a date?
We'll let you think about it for a couple of
Yeah,
weeks.
because we have a lot coming up, so.
Yeah, that's
we'll
true.
try to find a date. And just, so you know, I will not be in attendance at the next meeting. I'll be on vacation. But a couple of exciting things that are coming up at the next meeting is Chief Plaga and I believe the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police will be here to talk about the accreditation. And also Chief Plaga and Chief Hamill, and I've cleared this agenda items already with the supervisor, will be here to talk about our preparation for trains and derailments and how prepared we are. So both of those presentations are scheduled for the next meeting.
Okay. Does that meet everyone's satisfaction? Okay. Then, any other matters or board member comments? Then we stand adjourned.